Wordle clone like this. Let's go. First thing we need to do is to visit this website, build a React app from scratch. We could either use a framework or we could use a build tool. Since what we're building is a pretty small application, we could just use a build tool instead of a framework. And in this case, we will be using Vite. It's a build tool that aims to provide a faster and leaner development experience. So to get it, we just copy this and paste it in our terminal. Replace my app with whatever you want. After a bit of wait, you'll see we'll have a folder here with our files. So what we do is we have to cd into it, install the dependencies. So what that does is it'll install the node modules so we can run our app. Let's run the app itself. And boom, just visit this page. And here is what our page should look like. So let's start from scratch. We can remove all of this from app.css. That'll remove all the styling on this page. And we can remove everything in app.jsx and remove all the unused imports. Looking at index.html, we could change this. We could change this to Wordle clone. See that? And again, if you have an icon folder, you could replace this with whatever your icon's called. So if we have an href here, it'll point to the public folder and then it'll point to whatever file is this. First thing we're going to do is let's go onto app.jsx and let's edit our function. So here we're going to store the guesses. So in a Wordle app, we'll have 6 guesses. And we're going to use state for that. Now, as you're typing, you may notice that there's no autocomplete for this. To fix that, let's add a jsconfig.json file. And let's put this information in it. So now, if we look back onto this, use state, this will now have the autocomplete and it'll import it for us. Let's choose the default state, an empty array like this. And now let's return a container class name of app and our Wordle grid component, which we will make. Or we could just name it grid because we know it's a Wordle app. So there's no point in calling it Wordle grid. Just call it grid. Let's pass in the guesses. Now let's create a component folder. And let's create the grid file. We're also going to create a CSS file. Let's create our empty grid component and export it. So now we can import this and it won't cause an error. This takes in the guesses, if I can spell guesses. Let's define how many rows there are. So in a Wordle game, there's 6 rows and there's 5 columns. Columns are for how many letters there are in a word. So in our case, we're going to use 5-letter words. You can change this if you want. We'll go with the traditional 5-letter word. Let's define our current guesses. So it's going to be either guesses or it's an array of 6 and we'll fill it with empty string. So it'll look like this 6 times. Now let's return a container with grids. And let's create a new array of rows. So again, an array of 6 elements. We're going to fill it up with nothing. We're going to map through each element in that array. So there's 6 of them. So this is the value and this is the index. We don't need the value because it's just going to be undefined. So just do underscore character. Okay, so now we're going to return a div with a class name of row. So each of these is going to be a row, and each of these rows, we're going to create an array of columns. So array of columns, which is 5. So this is for each letter of the word. We're going to fill it up with undefined, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to map. Again, value and index. We don't need the value because it's undefined. So we'll just do that again. And here we're using index, and we're using index here. So we're just going to specify this is the row index, and this is the call index. So now we're at a cell. So let's just go over what this does. So array of rows, it's an array of 6 elements. It's going to be that, and then 6 of these. So undefined, 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 undefined. Okay, so we're going on the first one first, the first undefined. So when we're this, with the row index of 0, we're at the first undefined, and we're going to return an array of calls, which is 5. So it's going to be an array of columns, and we're going to fill it with undefined. So what happens is it's going to be like this. So at the moment, it's like this, and we're going to map over all of these undefineds. Let's go to the Wordle website just to illustrate it a bit better. So this is the array of columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this is the array of columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this right here, this position where this comment is, this refers to a cell. So a row index and a call index, this will refer to this, or this, or this, or this, or this. We could remove this. So we're now on a cell or a letter. So we're going to get the letter, which is from current guesses, the row index. So this is now a word, and we get the letter. There's a case where we don't have any guesses yet. So in this case, let's say we don't have any guesses, and we index into that, then it will be undefined because we haven't made a guess yet. Then we cannot continue to index into undefined, and this will throw an error. To safeguard against that, we use optional chaining, which is this 2 characters here. So what this does is, if this is undefined, then we short circuit and return undefined. If there is a guess, then we can continue to index. So if this is undefined, we want to return a empty value, empty string in this case. And now let's return the letter. So let's create a div. Let's call it cell. And here we're just returning the letter. In React, whenever we're mapping something, so we're mapping here, we need the top element that we're returning to have a key. React needs a key so it can track each item in the list when it updates the screen. So without a key, React might get confused and it might accidentally reuse or reorder one of the elements. So think about it like editing a checklist. We're only going to be editing one item in that checklist. What React does is it only updates that one key, and it doesn't do anything to the other keys. If we don't have the key attribute to our elements, then it'll update everything. So we need a key, so that makes React faster. So for this, it's a row. So we could use row index as our key. And for the letter here, we could use row index and call index as the key. We could use a template string. Let's make it visible on the screen. Let's make styles for the grid class. Then let's make for the row class. Make a gap of 5 pixels between each row. And now let's make a cell class. This will be the boxes. To make the box visible, we'll make a border. Let's open up our index.css and let's fix this by changing that into justify content and line items. Don't forget to import the CSS file. And you can see, there it is. Now let's put some letters in here just so we know what it looks like. Trees as our first guess. And then we'll just do empty characters for the rest. Let's change the color here. So yeah, this is what it looks like so far. It's looking good. Looking at the Wordle app itself, we need to make a keyboard at the bottom here. We can click on this. So you can use this to remove our characters, or we could use the enter key to submit a guess, and it'll change the color depending on whether or not the character is in the right place, the wrong place, or if it's not in the word. We could also use the actual keyboard, so blues. For example, you could use the keyboard there. So Control B to bring the Explorer back up, and let's make a keyboard class. In the app file, let's return a keyboard and let's give it a handle key press. Just name it on key press. And then the function itself is handle key press. Let's make it empty and let's make the keyboard. So in the keyboard, let's make a empty component first and then import it. And then now let's import it here. So it's accepting a on key press prop. And let's take a look at the Wordle app again. So we have all these characters and the enter key and the back key. Define a variable at the top here. And it's going to be an array, and in each of them will be another array. So the first array would be QWERTY UIOP. The next array will be ASDF blah blah blah. And the third array. Let's render it. So let's make a container for the keyboard. And for each keyboard row, let's make a row. We return the keyboard row singular. Let's close the Explorer tab with Control B, or if you're in a Mac, Command B. Remember, we need a key, so this will be the row index. So for each row, we're going to do again the letter. We're going to map that again, and the keyboard, what keys in there. So now render out Q, render out W, E, and so on. So we're going to use a button here. Render out the key. If it's backspace character, so this character here, let's just return an arrow. Otherwise, we return the key. This one's better, actually. There we go. Let's add in some classes. It's going to be a template string. It's the keyboard key. And we need two different ones. So if it's enter key or the back key, needs to be wider. Otherwise, it's just a regular size. Key is either backspace or is enter. Then keyboard key wide or just nothing. Let's go to the keyboard.css and apply those styles. And finally, let's import our styles. It's not appearing because we're not returning the button. We need to return the button. There it is. So we can click on these, but of course, we haven't made the functionality. So let's do that right now. So let's do the virtual keyboard. So just clicking on this. So on the button, we're going to do a handle click, which takes in the key. And we're going to call our on key press with the key. And then get the handle click and assign it to on click of the button. And we get the current key, just put it in there. Let's verify it's working. Just do a console log here. And if I inspect it, go to the console tab and just get rid of everything here. If we go Q, we can see Q, enter, enter, backspace, backspace. Perfect. Now let's handle the physical keyboard. We can type instead of clicking on the keys. So here we use a use effect, and we need to add a event listener to the window. Add event listener. On the key down event, we're going to call handle key down. Use effect returns a cleanup function so we can remove the event handler. So return window remove event listener, key down, and handle key down. Let's define a handle key down function, takes in an event, and here's our logic. So let's get the key of event.key. If the key is one of these, then we can continue with the logic. How do we test for a character? So what you can do is just have key equals A or key is equal to B or something like that, but we'd be repeating it 26 times. Instead of this, we could use regular expressions. So in case you're a regular expression with 2 /, the character is within capital A to capital Z, capital Z. It will start with this character and end with this character. This will catch Q, W, E, R, A, whatever is in there. And then we're going to use test. So this returns a Boolean value. So it will test if this key matches this regular expression. And it should match it for all of these letters. If that occurs, we want to do event.prevent default. This ensures that we have complete control over what happens if you press a key. Sometimes the keys have different behaviors in different browsers, but with this, we can determine what it does. So we have complete control. And what we want is we want to call the on key press with the key. Sorry, not the event, with the key. Cool, let's see if that's being picked up. We can console log here. Okay, so if I go Y, this is picking up here. Now if I type Y, it's not being picked up. Why is that? Well, actually, it's because of this. So if I do Shift Y, now it's being picked up. It should only pick up lowercase. So what we're going to do is we're just going to change that to lowercase. So now if I go Y, you can see it's picking up there. However, we need to make it uppercase because this is uppercase Y and this is lowercase y. So it's kind of inconsistent. So let's change that to uppercase. Now I'm not pressing shift, it's pressing Y. Cool, it's uppercase. Now if I do enter, press on the enter key, it does make it uppercase here too. Then this is not uppercase. So we could just make this uppercase as well. Now when we click on this, you can see it's enter with uppercase, backspace, uppercase. Now let's remove the console logs. And now let's move on to the on key press function, handle key press. So it takes in a key and it will give a current guess. So let's make a new state here. Current guess, set current guess. Use state with an empty string. First of all, let's stop making a guess if we have exceeded the number of guesses. So for example, we have 6 words here. Let's just make some guesses here. So imagine I'm terrible at Wordle and I've run out of guesses. So now you shouldn't be able to make another guess. So we need to handle that. So in our application, if the number of guesses is equal to 6, then we can return because we don't want to do anything. We will only make a guess if we press the enter key. So if our key is equal to enter, remember uppercase, then we make a guess. If the current guess, which is the word I'm guessing, the length is 5, then we have made a guess. We will add that into the guesses. So take in the previous guesses and we take in the new current guess. And then we set the current guess to be empty because we need to reset it. If the key is something else, let's say backspace, then what we do is we take out a character from the current guess. So we take in the guess, the previous, and now we slice the last character off it. This returns the word, but without the last letter. Finally, if our current guess, the length of that, hasn't reached 5 characters yet, so it's not a 5-letter word yet, we just add the current key to our guess. Take in the previous, and let's add in the key. I'm going to make it lowercase, so our guesses would be like trees instead of trees. Doesn't really matter, but I think I like this better. Add in a console log here, more than 6 guesses, and pressed enter key, pressed backspace key, pressed any other key. So here, let's just console log our guesses. So let's try and type trees. T-R-E-E-S, more than 6 guesses. Oh, it's because of this, right? Just have 1 character in there. We have trees as our first guess. Let's try trees again for our second guess. Don't type it there, type it here. So you can see as I'm typing E, I pressed any other key. So it's going into here. And now I'm going to press S. And now I'm going to press backspace. Press backspace key. Let's console log our current guess here, just so we know what's happening. And now let's type with the physical keyboard. So T, so now our current guess is T. R, now TR. E, TRE, E, and then S. And finally, now we do enter, boom, and there's our guess here. And it's now empty again. Awesome. But we want to see what we're typing, so we know what we're guessing. So we need to pass in whatever we're guessing onto the grid. Put in our current guess into the grid. Current guess. Let's get the current guess. Let's change our logic for getting our guesses here. Let's create an array of all of the guesses that we have. And if we have a current guess, let's add it to this array. I'm going to push the current guess. And we just push an empty array. Let's replace this with all guesses. So let's try typing trees. Perfect, that's working. And if I press enter, we should now move on to the third row. Let's try a different guess. Treat. Enter. Then now we should be on this. Trees. Treed. I don't know. But it works. But now, we don't know how good our guesses are. So we need to color these depending on our results. Let's make a util file. And here we're going to make a function called getLetterStates. For each row, we will get the letter states for that row. So this returns an array of 5 elements. So in this case, first row, it will return an array of 5 columns. So the first column is the state of T. So whether it's correct, colored green, present, colored yellow, or absent, not colored at all. Takes in the current guess and the solution. If there's no guess or no solution, we just return a safe value. And now let's get all of the solution characters and guess characters into an array. So this will be like, let's say the guess is trees. It'll be T, R, E, E, and S, something like this. Let's pass through and mark all of the green letters for each character and the index. If the character is equal to solution chars I, that means it's correct. So states of I is correct. Let's make a states variable, an array of 5 elements, and just fill it up with absent. That's our default value. So this will become correct if this is in the right place. And then solution chars, this is important, is equal to null. I'll tell you why later. So this is the green, mark green. And then now we mark yellow. So we loop through all of the guess characters. If the states of I is equal to correct, we don't need to do anything there. Here's the return. So if the solution characters, if the character is in there, then it'll be in the solution index. So if it's not equal to -1. If the solution characters is not equal to -1, then that means the character is in the solution somewhere. So we do states I is equal to present. And then we do solution characters of whatever that solution index is equal to null. Again, this is important. And finally, return states. Okay, why is this important? Okay, let's try with an example. Let's say the solution is trees and our guess is trust. When we check against, so we check our first T against the solution. That's correct. And we set it to null. Let's say null is hyphen When we go to the second T, we see there's no more T's in the trees, in the solution. That's the correct behavior. So this should be green and this should be absent because there's no two T's in our solution. If we didn't do this either, then this will be like this. This will become green and this will become yellow. But there's only one T in trees. So it's a bit misleading. That's why we do that. Okay, so this is our get letter states. Now let's do our states for the keyboard because this will work for all of our guesses. So for this one, we're calling it per row. But for this, the keyboard, we're calling it for all rows. So that's why we need all guesses. Again, we need the solution. What we're returning here is an object. So that object will have, let's say, a key of A, and we'll say present, and let's say C or B is either absent or C is correct. So something like this for all 26 characters. So let's define what we're going to return. So yeah, this is what we're going to return, and let's modify it. For each guess, we're going to do something. So let's get the states for that guess. Get letter states, guess, solution. For each guess character, we're going to do something. So each letter and the index. First, let's get the current state. Let's get the current state of the keyboard. Current state is key states letter, or it's unused. And the new state is equal to the states of I. If the current state is correct, is marked as correct, we don't do anything. We don't want to downgrade it to, let's say, yellow. So you want it to stay green. That'll be the highest rank. The next highest rank is if it's yellow, it's present. And the new state isn't correct. We don't do anything. So what happens? If it's correct, we don't want to do anything because it's already at the highest state, green. Otherwise, if it's yellow and the new state is not green, then it's still going to be yellow or lower. So we don't need to do anything there. Otherwise, we will set the new key state to whatever the new state is. So let's say current state is yellow and the new state is green because our guess is really good. Then we change that from present to correct, which is now the best state. Remember, we can do a safety check here. If there's no guess, then we just return. Now let's use this in our keyboard and our grid. In our app, let's get the solution. Let's use let's say trees, for example. And let's pass in the solution into our grid. And for the keyboard, we can just call keyboard states here. So get keyboard states. And we're getting the current guesses. Oh, sorry, the guesses array and the solution. So now let's color it. So keyboard states is pass that in. Let's go into the grid first and let's consume the solution. Okay, so for each row, let's get the letter states. The current guess is just this and the solution. We need to change the cell to include the state for that letter. So do like letter state is just the states of this call index. We changed the class name here to be cell of letter state. So cell of correct or present. Now if we go into elements, let's look at this S here. This should be cell correct. Perfect. And then these ones don't have anything. Let's go into our grid CSS and we'll change the color. So cell correct. You can see there. And let's change the color and then it'll be just these. Let's make another guess here. Let's do trust. Oh, There's a few bugs here. This is correct. U isn't in there. I don't know why it's yellow. Sorry about that. This should be -1. Now I don't like this border here, so let's change that. Change it to those colors. Perfect. So it's looking really similar to Wordle now. One more bug is as we type. So let's say our next guess is FREES. You could see it's already filling in the colors here. We should only fill it in when we've pressed enter. So to fix that, we need a Boolean flag is complete to mark it as being a complete guess. So we've pressed enter or we haven't pressed enter. What we want is the guess's length is greater than the current row index. Let's say our guess's length, we have one guess in the tank and the row index is 0. This is true. So 1 is greater than 0 and it's complete. If let's say we have 0 guesses and this is the 0th index, 0 is not greater than 0, so this is not complete. So this means we haven't completed our guess yet. So what happens now? We change the states to, if it's complete, we get the letter states, or we just fill it with empty because we haven't completed yet. Now you can see we haven't pressed enter yet. Now we've pressed enter. But let's add an animation to when we're typing the letters. It should display some indication. And also, if we press enter, it just turns green right away. Let's have a color change. So let's do those in the CSS file. So let's do a keyframes. Let's name it pop. At 0%, we're going to have the scale be 1 normal and same as 100%. 50%, let's do a bigger scale. Well, that's not how you do it. Let's apply that animation to cell not empty. Okay, let's try that out. Boom, boom, boom. Awesome. And finally, on the cell class, let's do a transition of the background color. We'll ease it in. Let's try it out. Boom. For the keyboard state, so in app.jsx, we're passing in the keyboard states prop. Let's go back to keyboard. Let's consume it. And here, for each row, let's have the states. And if the key length is equal to 1, so if the key length is equal to 1, this is everything except for the backspace or enter key or backspace key. Then we want to use this key states. So keyboard states. And we get the key. So key to lowercase. Because this key represents these characters. So these are in uppercase, while the keys inside our object are in lowercase. So you want to make them the same. Otherwise, if it's either enter or backspace key, then we'll just have this. And then now let's pass in our state in our class name. Okay, let's go into keyboard.css and let's put in our styles. And we can see it's now turning green. Awesome. Let's make a terrible guess. Okay, so yeah, that means it's unused, not in the word. Our solution, let's change that to trust. Good. So S is yellow there. And if we go trust, that should turn green. Awesome. Here we have an error here. Each child in a list should have a unique key prop in the keyboard function. So let's go into keyboard. Usually where this occurs is where we map over something. So here we use map and we have a key here, so that's fine. And here we use map again, and here we don't have a key. So let's put a key here. Reload the page. Boom, it's gone. So remember, we have trees as our first guess here and trust as our solution. but we want a random word to use in our solution instead of just being trust all the time. This is where the random word API comes to play. So I'll link this in the description for you to check out. Basically what this does is it gives us a random word. So using an endpoints, we use this one /word and it will return one stored word randomly. The options can be further specified if we see the parameters menu. So this is what we want. Let's look at the parameters. The parameters can be combined. So number sets the number of requested words. We only want one, and this says return one stored word, so we don't need to look at that. Length sets the length of requested words. So this is what we want. We only want a word with 5 letters, so we would have to use length equals 5. So you can see in this example, $length equals 7 would return a word with a length of 7. So we want this to be 5. Language sets the language of requested words. So we want it to be in English. And it says don't provide the parameter. So we can ignore this. We can see here word length of 5, and it gives us an array with the word large in there. So that's what we want. So let's make a new file. I already made the file here. It's called word service. And in that word service, we'll be using the fetch function to get the random word and put this as our solution in app.jsx. We want an async function because we're using a async method, which is fetch. So here we await fetch with our link up here, and we return word. Now, rarely, like let's say this service is offline, it might throw an error. So that's why we need to put it inside a try catch block, and then we put everything in the try, and then if it returns an error, it'll go into the catch block, console error here, and just display the error. You could do something nicer than this, maybe display an error message at the top here. Now remember, our word came in an array, so this word would be in this format. So we want to remove that array and just return the string inside it. So what we can do is use object destructuring and just return this word. So that means, hey, this comes in an array format. So we get the first word out of there and we just return it. Okay, now let's use set solution to set that into our random word here. Let's use effect and let's make it run once by defining an empty dependency array. So new solution is equal to get random word, and then let's set the solution, and of course let's just console log it too. All right, we haven't imported useEffect yet, and now let's take a look. Okay, in our app it used to be trust, which was the default value. Let's change that to be empty string for now, and then let's just reload, and it says it's still a promise, still pending, even though we have awaited it. Since we're calling an async function, we need it to be awaited as well. So we need to do await get random word. However, we cannot use await outside an async function. So how do we do that? All you need to do is to define an async function inside the useEffect. And let's put everything in there. And then now we can just call getSolution like that. So let's reload the page. Cool. Well, it's no longer throwing the promise here, but it says type error intermediate value is not iterable at get random word. So I forgot to turn it into a JSON. So this returns a response and we need to turn it into a JSON format, and we need to await that too. That'll give us this word inside the array. We destructure it and we only return the string. So now if we reload it, you can see our word is toads. Used to be laxly, but it re-rendered. So always follow the last console log here. So that's our solution. So let's try typing toads. Awesome, we won. But where is our congratulations message? Well, we need to add that in. And also another thing, we can still type even though our game is already over. So we need to handle that as well. Let's display a congratulations message if the user has won. Looking at our handle key press function here, this is where we press enter. If our current guess length is equal to 5, then that means we have a 5-letter word and we set the guess. If our current guess is equal to the solution, then let's say we'll just alert. Okay, let's reload the page. Okay, our word is motel. So let's type motel. Congratulations, you have won. And there it is. Now what we want is we want to stop the user from typing again. Another state. And the default value is false because it's not game over. So now if we have won, set game is game over comes true. And now we need to disable the typing using the physical keyboard. So if we type here, or if we use the virtual keyboard by clicking on these, we need to disable that. So we pass in is game over to our keyboard. We consume it in our keyboard, and in our virtual keyboard, the handle click. If it's not game over, then we allow this to happen. And here too, if it's not game over, then we allow this to happen. So what happens if it is game over, then we won't handle this and we won't handle this, which is what we want. That's good. Okay, let's reload. Let's see what our solution is. I don't know if I'm even allowed to say that on YouTube, but let's just type it anyway. Congratulations, you've won. And then we see the animation pop up afterwards. This isn't really what we want. We want the animation first, and then we want to know if we've won. You could set a timeout for maybe 1 second and then put the alerts at the top. All right, so our word is space, so we can type in space, and there we go. Pretty easy way of doing that. And then now with the game over, we want to be able to stop the physical keyboard and the virtual keyboard from working. So again, now with our changes, our keyboard no longer works, and also trying to type, it's not working either. So that's what happens when you win the game. However, there's one more way of the game finishing, and that's if you have exhausted your 6 guesses. Let's try another if statement here. Now we want if the guesses length is 5, guesses length equals 5. We set the timeout and we say better luck next time, buddy. And we set game over true again. So let's try it again. So the word is witty. Let's try type something else. Fools. That's not it. Might work the 6th time. And better luck next time, buddy. It works. Awesome. Now you might be wondering why its guesses length equals 5 instead of 6. It's because when we use set guesses here, this is setting the number of guesses to 6, but it's async. Remember, the current state until this is over is 5. So this if statement here, it's still saying the guesses length is 5. So awesome. That's our Wordle clone. Let's just remove solution, the console log there, and let's put this back as an empty array. So it's starting from scratch here. Anyways, guys, that's it for this tutorial. If you've enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, comment if you have suggestions on what I should do. And also, if you want to extend this, you can find a way to display a better congratulations message or better luck next time, buddy message. Instead of just using the alert, you can have like a modal pop up here. Hope you guys have fun with this tutorial. I had fun making this video, and I will see you next time. Bye.